It's also really late for you, isn't it? It's like midnight?
No, no, it's not late for me. It's only 9 o'clock. So I've sat down, I've got a cup of tea, I've got some notes, and we've got a jam-packed agenda. Oh, Pioneer just called you Sir Rusty. You are like quite a big deal in this community, which is absolutely warranted and earned, just so you know. And
Oh,
yes, Pioneer, that hairstyle that you're showcasing there in your GIF, that's actually what my hair looked like. Possibly with, less style in actual fact. So there we go. Good. How many folks have we got in? You were,
9.
as usual, really organized, and you sent me like the big chunky questions, and then you sent me some nice to haves. The good news is I've got answers to all of them. So that's a win, I think. Well, it depends if you like the answers, I suppose. You might
Oh,
not agree with me by the end.
well, that's great to hear, that a lot of the questions will get answered, and I know that'll make a lot of the people in the community really happy.
It's great. How did we lose two people already? What have I said wrong so far? That's bad, isn't it?
I don't
Should
know.
I take that personally? Can everybody just check that let's see the new hair. No, no, Southside, the new hair is like the old hair. That's the point. You miss the bad hair. I mean, objectively you could say that the normal hair is bad, but you miss the 80s mullet. That's the bit you missed out on. Now it looks like it normally looks, which is a massive, massive improvement. Um, Tea instead of wine. Grok, you know that, well, you may not know. I've already had my glass of wine, way behind, like done that. So yeah. Okay. Can I dive in, Rusty, or do you want to put some framework around? I'm happy to make your evening or your afternoon a little bit easier if you like, because you have been doing a lot of heavy lifting and fighting for the community. So I feel like you've got answers as a result of fighting. You can kick back and take it a little bit easy if you want. It's up to you.
Well, let's start with the first big question, and then that I know a lot of the people want to know about, and that's regarding the process used for the random file quotes and the amount of emissions given. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, of course. And Owen, the point is, I would never take a picture of myself with Worcestershire hair. Like, there should be no photographic evidence of that. You will not find any personal pictures of bucks anywhere on the internet, ever. They don't exist. Right. Okay. So, what is the process? I'm just going to dive straight in. What is the process used to go from random file quotes to the amount of emissions given? So the initial plan was to distribute approximately about 54,000 ant tokens per day. And to achieve this, what we do, when I say we, clearly I'm not directly involved in this. Most of you know by now that I'm not actually an engineer. But we randomly select 100 nodes on the network every minute, and we award each one of those randomly selected nodes that we do at each minute, 0.38 of an ant. The reason we select 100 nodes per minute was that is roughly how long it takes to retrieve quotes for random addresses on the network. To optimize the gas fees, because obviously right now, before we move to native token, we're using EVM. So to optimize gas fees, we don't distribute the rewards instantaneously. And instead, we kind of batch them up and we process payouts every 12 hours. So that's how effectively it works. However, uh, recently, retrieving the quotes from the network has taken a lot longer, almost twice as long as it was taking before. And as a result, the guys had to extend the reward interval from 1 minute to 2 minutes. And that's as of, I think, Thursday last week that was done. And since this change effectively halved the daily distribution of ant tokens, what we did was we compensated that by doubling the reward per selected node. So what I said before was it was 0.38. So by default, it moved up to 0.76 because now they're being sampled every 2 minutes rather than every minute. The problem with this, of course, is unfortunately that's reduced further given the network size, which we'll talk about, the likelihood of any given node receiving a reward because obviously they're being sampled less frequently. However, again, once we resolve the quoting issue, and you would have seen the update that rolled out today, we can shorten the interval back to a minute again, which then re-increases the chance of no's to be selected. With although I would note if we as we do that, the amount of ant will go from 0.76 for those nodes sampled every 2 minutes back down to 0.38 for those 100 nodes that are sampled every minute. That all of that said, and I hope you're following this, and there will be a write-up tomorrow, but all of that said, with more than 30 million, possibly 40 million nodes floating around out there, which is incredible, many folks, particularly smaller node operators with, let's say, like 50 or less ant nodes that are running via the LP, Launchpad for those of you who hate acronyms, um, have just in general a super low chance of receiving rewards payouts. Because effectively what we're saying is that, I don't know, what is that, 72,000 nodes out of 30 million nodes a day are getting rewarded. So clearly, the people that are running the absolutely huge number of nodes are far more likely to get, even though we're doing this random selection and we'll go back to every minute, because they're running more nodes, they're much more likely to be randomly selected. We could look to adjust this, but because of the numbers that we're playing with and the fact that, there shouldn't be anybody holding, you know, there shouldn't be anybody holding, sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so even if we decide that we want to start sampling more nodes, so we go from 100 nodes to 500 like nodes sampled every minute, what we're effectively doing, we could do that, but then the rewards are going to have to go right down, or we're creating inflation because we're giving out way more token. And the chances are, if people are running, tens of thousands of nodes, they're just going to double up on their rewards anyway. You're still unlikely to pick up the small node operators just by mathematics really. So the network that went out today, Chi had and I'll dig into that in the next bit because I think there's a question coming up on issues with the uploads and things. So this kind of relates to today's update. So we can go back to the 1 minute reward, but I don't think we're planning on increasing the amount of token that's going out via emissions because that's not going to be useful. I think we're pretty happy with the amount of token that's going out via emissions in the way that it is. But it is unfortunate that people are running small number of nodes at this stage with obviously the network being empty, relatively speaking, which again we'll talk about in a while, that we can't really do much to change that unless we start putting our hand on the scale. And that kind of stuff really scares me because there's whatever your opinion is, most people that hold an opinion that they really care about feel like they've got the right intention and that they feel like it's the right thing. The problem is that it might be the right thing for today, but going forward, it might not be the right thing, and you're kind of manipulating what should be an open and autonomous system by, if you start playing around with different things in regards to smaller node runners and stuff like that. And obviously, we don't have um, any visibility of that because the entire way the network's designed. So it's very difficult for us because it's not centralized to say, hey, that's a little bit inequitable. We need to do more for these people. That's not how it works. If you're in early and you're running and doing the vast amount of work for the network by running nodes, then of course you're going to get the more rewards for that. And actually, the best way we can address the imbalances there is to be getting more and more data coming onto the network so it's big enough that there's at least a greater opportunity for upload payments to everybody else as well. Very long answer, Rusty, but quite an important one, and I know something that people are super passionate about as well.
Yes, thank you for that. Kind of go on what you just mentioned a minute ago. So what's going on with uploads, especially in regards to larger files? What's being done to incentivize or de-incentivize users to upgrade from the Ant node 3.6 to the newer versions.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to talk about carrots and sticks because I'm a massive carrot fan and not a stick fan. And there are two ways to deal with things that you don't like. So we'll come into that, or you'd like to see change. Specifically with the issues then, and remember guys, like my knowledge here is I need to know enough to be dangerous and to be competent in my role. There are people infinitely, listen to me caveating this, but infinitely more intelligent and technically savvy than I, who are in the forum and do appear in Discord as well. Small team, time limited, but if I don't know the answer to something, I'm not going to pretend to know the answer. That's not helpful to anybody. And I will go away and find out. And that's why I went away and found out the answer to the emissions and stuff. You can obviously take from that what you will and be happy with it or not happy with it, but at least you've got the factually correct, accurate answer to it. So this is in the same vein. So the issues we were having, or we are having, hopefully we're no longer having, will time will tell with this latest release. Not enough quotes, which prevented uploads from even starting, as not enough nodes even responded back. Now, there's a few things that are kind of part and parcel of that. Quoting timeout, which didn't present as an error to end users, but was an underlying cause that the guys discovered. Chunk proof validation, which is where an upload would succeed, but then couldn't be retrieved, rendering it useless. And I know there's been some conversations in the support channel and Discord, I'm sure stuff on the forum as well, around and Happy Being sort of gave some feedback around the file only upload and starting from scratch and the implications of that. What's really nice, guys, you might not, and I do encourage the team to sort of acknowledge when they've picked stuff up from you, because there's a lot that's screenshot, copy and pasted across. But I know Anselm, from an API point of view, is just really enjoying and valuing the forum and just cannot get over how quickly people pick stuff up and find gaps. And I know that him and Mick are really embracing that, as is Chi. And also there's stuff coming out in Discord where I think you probably see Mick and Chris more on the Discord side. But again, it is super, super valuable. And I think what they enjoy as well is because, particularly the OGs, I have to sort of tip my hat to you guys, and you've been around for years, but it's not criticism with frustration, it's criticism with good intent. So developers who, we did ask them if they want to come on the Discord stages, and we got like literally no interaction, which did make me chuckle. So they're not necessarily that confident to be social and all that kind of stuff. But when they're talking tech and they're talking to somebody who's being really pragmatic with them, I think they get a lot from that as well. So just a bit of a thank you on that one. So not enough quotes were preventing uploads from starting. Quote timeout, chunk proof validation, which things were succeeding, but then it wasn't being retrieved, so it was useless. And we think there's also an element, and that's something that the team need to investigate more, of network scale in this, because a lot of the times when we're doing stuff on our testnet, which is obviously small, it's a couple of thousand nodes, we're not seeing these errors, and then we're seeing them, well, we're certainly not seeing them at the degree that they're happening on mainnet. But of course, we've got a huge now difference in size from testnet to mainnet. What we have done though over the past week or so, we've when trying to upload to our test nets, we were able to replicate the failures. So the release that's gone out has now got fixes in it that reduce the rate that these occur. It won't completely solve the failures, and that's something that David is all over. Chi is all over. It's obviously a priority. If you can't upload to a data storage network, we've got a bit of a fundamental issue. But in the latest testnet, the chunk proof verification upload failure rate was reduced from, we were getting 3 in 2,100 and something, and that's reduced down to 0. Lack of quotes upload failure has reduced from, there was 40 something in 2,000 odd, down to 0. But again, my caveat to that is we're obviously testing it on a 2K node network and not a 30 million node network, which is like 15,000 times the scale. So 1500, sorry, times the scale. So it may not be the same. And I'm sure you guys will let us know. I do want to just tag on to that, Rusty, as we're talking about problems, which is always, we have to just lean into this stuff because we've got some things coming down the pipe that we really need this in place. Otherwise, we're going to have some really tough conversations with each other, not with you guys. The There's something in here about like the upgrading, and you sort of talked about, how do we encourage people to upgrade. Like I said, I'm a big fan of carrot, not stick. A stick in this example would be, we're only going to start sampling nodes that are on the latest version, right? For emissions payments. Now, obviously, we'd never just do that. We would give you notice to say that that's what we're doing. I'm not sure that we want to go necessarily down that route for many reasons. I think it's a stick, and I'm not a big fan of that. So what we're also looking at is to give more rewards to relay nodes. Nick and Anselm are pretty close with that work. It's going to go into testing next week before it's pushed out. So we're thinking it'll probably get pushed out. We don't release on a Friday, so maybe Thursday if it's been tested enough. And that relates to basically what we want to do is ensure that the network is rewarding nodes that act as relayers for other nodes. So they're doing a lot of the hard work rather than the nodes that are asking for relays. And then hopefully, if that incentive is in place, that will boost the desirability to upgrade your nodes, as you can essentially make more, or you'll have the opportunity to make more just by upgrading. And like I say, I would always rather use an incentive than a disincentive. Is that the opposite? I suppose so. Stick. I said stick before. I'm going to go with stick. Yeah, Scott, get a stick. I can't multitask, so I've got no chance of watching. I literally saw that because it's a GIF and that's like my language. Um, but yeah, I'll scroll back up for questions, and we can always bring David on for a chat after I finish my monologuing, which I apologize for. Every time I'm allowed on a stand up, I come on, and then Nick will say to me, Bucks, do you have anything to add? And I'll go, oh, yeah, just want to quickly say. And then at the end of my quickly saying, I have to thank everybody for coming to my TED talk, because the rule is if Bucks goes over 5 minutes, she has to recognize that she's spoken for possibly too long. Rusty, back to you. Next
All right.
question.
The
Urgh.
next question you touched on a little bit, but I'm gonna ask it. Have you thought about reducing the emissions and distributing them over a longer period? Many people believe that only a handful of whales are collecting the vast majority of the ant.
Yeah. Okay. It feels like, and feels is such a bad word because it's emotive, but we're going to go with it. It feels like people by and large are earning proportionally. I'm ignoring ghost nodes in this conversation, but people are earning proportionally what they're putting into the system, right? So if they're putting in less resources in terms of ant nodes, the expectation can't be as high for those operators as perhaps for operators that are running thousands upon thousands of nodes. Yes, we could try and, here comes the stick again, we could try and disincentivize the really big node runners by reducing the amount of rewards. But actually, we know just mathematically that's not going to help the small node runners. And if the idea is almost forcing the bigger node runners out, that feels like a little bit of a folly, because I think a lot of those folks with spare capacity, and I know some of them, or I speak to some of them at least, will likely run their nodes even at a net zero profitability, because they've got the spare resource, it's already there, and they hope that any tokens they receive today will be worth much more in the future. We're going to talk about that. Not that I can manipulate markets, but it's an important thing to talk about because it is. So I think, I mean, Shu, you guys know that he works very closely with the Mesa team. He's an absolute legend. He's running thousands of nodes and he hardly earns like 40, 50 amp per day. So it's covering the cost of really of his power bill on a month, but it hasn't stopped him from doing it. Because he's in it for the long haul. So I think it's a little bit of a it's not a misdirection, but there's other things we can do. And this is what I know I sort of bang on about quite a lot. And I do with the guys as well, to be fair. It isn't like do step one, then do step two, then do step three. It doesn't work like that. So it's it's an ecosystem. So all of these inputs need to happen at the same time in sync. Maybe there's different emphasis. Let's just go with emphasis on each, and one becomes more of a priority than another, at a particular point in time, but all of them need to be fed. And so rather than just worrying about how do we earn via running nodes, are there other opportunities for normies like me to get involved in the network and to be able to be rewarded and feel the benefit of the network other than maybe running nodes? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, there are other ways. If you're not a node runner or indeed a builder, there is still another way that you can benefit from supporting the network. And if the network's winning, if builders are winning, and if you as a participant in the network are winning, everybody's happy. And we were talking internally earlier about, the three-legged stool, and three-legged stool being node operator, application developer, and then token holder, and those three all having to sort of work in harmony. And the token kind of represents the network really in all of that, because that's network health. So and then David told me some fascinating stuff about where the milkmaid three-legged stool came from, because it was on certain ground and it gave them balance, which I think is quite an apt comparison to these very early days. We've been live, guys, for 4 weeks, and 4 weeks today, I think it is. We launched on the 11th of February, which I think was Wednesday. So we are in like the very, very early embryonic. And yeah, so we need to look at. I've just looked down at the chat, and Harmony is hard at the actual amp prices. Yeah, exactly. So you can imagine I open that every morning and go, "Hmm, lots of on the upside then, lots of room to run, for sure." Okay, look up, Bucks. Let's get a big shout out for Neo's download screen. In fact, let's give two big shout outs for Neo. Neo's not on the call, I don't think, because Neo's on a completely different time zone, which I can never quite get in my head. But so big shout out to Neo for the download script, and also, yay, he's here. Great stuff. And Neo and Mindful, as you will know in Discord, are our mods. And the guys just a really good, and we'll get to impossible futures, because I'm really looking forward to diving into that and sharing it with you. But they're really good because I can share stuff ahead of time and say, I just want to get a sense check on this, because there's stuff that the guys will, and they're very different and they care about very different things, that they'll point out and they'll fight for and they'll get upset about or they'll get excited about. And it's a really good test. And I want to use, I know the dev guys, technology guys, engineering guys, however you want to phrase it, rely and use the forum an awful lot. But I think using the OGs as like that alpha insider group, and I specifically called it insider chat, ahead of us as we move to some of these bigger programs, just to get some feedback. I don't necessarily need a quorum and a consensus around stuff, but I think other people flagging up our blind spots, or things that they might be risking the success of something, or builds that might help it be more successful, I think would be really, really useful. So yeah, we are going to start using you guys a little bit, if you don't mind, in that way. But a big shout out and thank you to Mindful and Neo. There you go, Southside. I did what you said. How about that? How do you like them apples? Right, I'm going to scroll back through. David is absolutely, thank goodness David's in the chat. That's great. Can I talk about the next thing? Can I? Oh no, actually, you can ask your other two questions, Rusty, because I have answers for those as well. Your sub questions.
Yeah, so one of the big things that drew many people to autonomy was the idea of a persistent network. Are we there yet?
Okay, so forgive my little chuckle. But once we get the uploads nailed, because clearly that's a priority, We can then move with absolute vitality and ferociousness to testing our downloads and downloads on the network. It's going to require an enormous amount of, for want of a better expression, my kid's obsessed with UFC right now, so kicking and punching of the network to determine whether we hit 100 out of 100 or a million out of a million every time. A 1 in a million fail is still a fail in a permanent network scenario. So David is not going to let any of us start talking about we can guarantee permanence for the lifetime of the network until those rigorous tests have been done. Clearly, that creates some issues with, people, partners, etc. If they're going to use the network, they want guaranteed of permanence if you're advertising it as a permanent storage solution with a one-time payment. So we've got a couple of options. We can do secondary backups at our expense, which isn't ideal, but is possible. Or we could go down a path of like less critical private data to start with, because of course we have to get data and this is the the complexity with the thing we're launching. It's not a product, it's a network. So of course, to prove that data is permanent, we need data in order to prove that everything that went up can be downloaded. So we can do some testing internally, but like we've just talked about with the uploaders and the errors we're seeing, we've got test networks of 2,000 nodes, we've got a main net of 30 million. So it doesn't necessarily translate. And so it's a volume game, because if there is a fractional error, you're not going to see it if you're testing thousands of downloads, but you might see it if you're testing millions of downloads. So it's I can guarantee no guarantees. It's good I looked down at this time. Well, maybe the network will survive a planet destroying asteroid or your money back. What he said. Fine. So eventually, no, not what he said. No, at some point we do need to get to, we've run enough tests that we are confident, but we're just not, there's no data on the network, guys. Let's be honest with ourselves. We're absolutely embryonic. We've got the thing stood up after all these years. It's ready to go ish. There's some big things that we still got to iron out, but then we're off to the races. And then we can start saying, okay, well, we've had all of these uploads, and we can talk about that, because I know that's another question, and we can guarantee that everything that's been uploaded can also be downloaded and accessed on your devices wherever you are. Whew. Give me another one.
All right, one more is so partners. You mentioned partners. Once we're a little bit more sure that we have some persistent data and the upload process is a little bit more stable, do we have some partners that want to update a lot of data?
Yeah, so a really simple answer to that question, because you guys are aware of them already, is FIO, for your eyes only. Their data breach database has over 29 billion credentials in it, and they are desperately wanting to upload 30 petabytes of data ASAP. And they would really like to start uploading that. I mean, 30 petabytes isn't a bad amount of data to get started with. So um, I think that the point is that it's, we, of all of the nodes that are running, we don't know how much is true capacity. And I would really like to find out, because we're theorizing. But again, there's nobody, at the center of all of this by its very nature. It's a decentralized network. So we're only going to know that ants are good ants, nodes are good actors once we say, hey, host this, and host this data, do the quote, and actually accept the data. So the sooner people like FIO, partners like FIO, can start uploading stuff to the network without issue, without frustration, without problems, which is obviously what we were addressing in this latest release, they're there and they're ready and they're able to do so. So we need to get out of our own way with stuff like that. But I'm sounding pretty negative about this, but I'm actually not. I love the fact that this is live, and I think David would hopefully agree with me that the change in the team, because they've got a live product, and it actually, I think some of them can't quite believe, because they've been at Maysafe for so long, that it is live and out there. And I think when we were talking about impossible futures with them earlier, the difference in energy is huge, and I think it's now more determined than ever. So a lot of these issues you're seeing, I think, are going to get figured out a lot quicker. And, recognizing the fact that, as what I said about the test network, it's a couple of thousand nodes, which in some Web3, you know, projects is like, oh, we've got 5,000 nodes. It's like, yeah, we've got 30 million. Like, we are actually a legitimate alternative to the current infrastructure for the internet. And that's what the guys and you all have been building and supporting all of these years. And so to get through these last few kinks, and David has promised there's no need for a redesign in any of this, that we will get to resolution, I think is really exciting. So I I don't want people to feel negative about this stuff. I don't want you to think that we're hyping up and unrealistic either. It's a really hard line to tread. And I think, it's difficult, probably more so in Discord, because there are people that come and look in our Discord. There are exchanges, there are partners, there are press, there are people that are just coming and keeping an eye on what's going on. And so there might be a little bit of shine and sugarcoating in Discord compared to maybe the forum, and certainly compared to the Slack messages that fling around internally. But I do think overall we've got a reason to feel optimistic, as long as we've got plans and in place to deliver on our optimism, basically.
Well, thank you for that.
There's
I
one
got
more. There's one more minor question. Have I then done them all? I think there is.
those are the major questions. There's three
Ask me
minor
about
questions.
TypeScript.
Um, so many are very excited about the TypeScript API. Um, and are there any plans for a REST or a GraphQL API layer? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, I'm not going to lie and pretend I knew what that was. But because I saw it in your document, yeah, see, David already knows. David, asked Nick. So I do have an answer to this, in actual fact. So REST would be a gateway, needs a server running it. Can you totally write this up for me? So either something we develop and community deploy, or a separate commercial entity builds one. So I think Nick's big thing right now is support the guys. Nick and David are working much more hand in glove, which is great, and I know Nick is really enjoying that as well, because it really helps him as a product manager and lead to coordinate everything, and to be informed. We've also got a tool that everybody's now embracing, as we're working a little bit differently, and there's much more of a flow between all of the guys, rather than them all being subject matter or like task experts. um, but I think his sort of focus really is to give the tools as much as we can for the developers that we need to, which is obviously Python. TypeScript is going to be super useful, and yes, David, that's absolutely on his radar. And I know Anselm's put his hand up, as mixed, and Victor, to get cracking with that ASAP. Victor's our new guy. He's amazing, from what I've seen. He's QA, but he also has been pretty helpful with coding, so that's good. And he's all over the Python API at the moment. And then in regards to REST or GraphicQL API, I think right now, let's get the network guys focusing on the absolute like nuts and bolts of it, and then we can look to explore what happens next. And I think that probably links in a little bit to the next two questions, which I would really, yeah, exactly. I've actually seen them, like the Rhythm and Tracton and Happy Being stuff is great. And I think they're going to enjoy the next part of what we're going to talk about as well. Um, so yeah, I know the next two questions were about, is the foundation going to consider adding incentives to get upload traffic going? And what's happening on the autonomy AI front? Are there any AI apps or training in the works? So, couple of things here. These questions link quite nicely to the Impossible Futures program, which is something that the foundation is funding. So it probably makes more sense for me to chat and share about that for a while. And even the Made Safe team haven't seen the early version of the website yet. So you're all going to get an exclusive on that. So if you're happy for me to sort of dive into that, I can, or we can go back and answer any questions that you want to. So it's entirely up to you what you guys want to do. Really, I'd love to talk to you about impossible futures if you're game.
Well, let's hear about it. I know a lot of people are wondering what impossible futures are, and I think it's going to make a lot of people happy. And let's hear it.
Yeah, it made David really happy today to sort of because I've been kind of sharing a few things, but not too much. If you hate it, don't tell me because I might get a little bit defensive and upset. Right, so let me um, let me take a quick moment, quick in the context of Bucks, to provide a tiny bit of context on this. So for many reasons, up till now, we've focused on node operators. Those of you who've been in the network and in the community for a long time will know exactly why. The first bit of scale, but essentially for everyone else, node operators were the first bit of scale we could test with. And it was a logical place to start with rewards because we weren't in a functional place in terms of upload, download, etc. And essentially, nodes are the base layer for everything. You know, they're the table stakes aspect is reliant on that node network. It's the most important thing we've got. Upload, download, security, performance, everything, and permanence all relates back to the nodes, how they operate, how they're incentivized, etc., etc. But we need to move forward from here, and I'm not very good, as you may have noticed, at waiting. And like, even if we can't do it exactly right, I'll try and do things so that we're doing things because I think momentum creates more momentum, and it's nice to be able to work out in the open with real things rather than maybe a little bit more closed with ideas and aspirations, right? And a data network is somewhat alive now, our data network, but it's sleeping without data, really. And as a result of that, we've unavoidably, but we have created a bit of a black hole, I would say, of selling pressure with tokens that are continuing to be generated and unlocked. But because the data upload is difficult and inconsistent, because we're not sure what nodes are real and not real, because the demand for the token for data uploading is low, and the experiences connected to data that's being hosted are, well, there aren't any. So we needed a plan, and that's fine. And you'll see from the stuff that's rolling out over the coming days and weeks and months that we actually did have a plan. So that's good news. So Impossible Futures will be launching next week. There will be a 6-week recruitment phase, and because it's also a big promotional thing for us as well. And then there'll be an AlphaNet, which is just a test net, but I needed to call it something. An AlphaNet that will go live for builder participants on April 22nd. The aim of the program is kind of twofold. It's to encourage builders to develop their applications with autonomy. And it's also to provide utility and incentives to ant holders and buyers, ensuring that that group is highly motivated to support builders, which obviously means builders win, and more generally, the network as well. So it's basically aligning incentives across the board. I'm going to put a link in the Discord chat, she says. Right. So this is a really, 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 really MVP early version. And there's a lot that still needs clarification, assessment criteria, process, even voting. We've had some back and forth. Neo and Mighty Fool put their thoughts in earlier today on some of that stuff as well. So I just want to kind of watch the questions bubble over the next couple of days before we really start mobilizing this early next week. So, do have a look at this, but I'll go through it a little bit with you. So basically, the program is aimed at two groups. There's builders and there's backers. Builders apply to develop a proof of concept on our AlphaNet. They compete to produce a working application. And basically, when you've got to your proof of concept after 2 weeks, there's a community vote. The top 12 go through to the next round. To be in the program in the first place, there is a qualitative element because we're just not at a point of automating everything yet. So we are in these early phases of the network going to have to lean in and do some hand holding just to make sure projects are legitimate, people are real, expectations are understood. There is really clear criteria of what you need in order to qualify to have your proof of concept put up for voting. So we've got quality standards, all that kind of stuff. But essentially, you create your proof of concept over a couple of weeks. If the community love it, they can spend Ant in order to vote you up. We're looking at the exact mechanics of that. There will be an incentive if you spend money, if you spend Ant, sorry, on voting, that you get more Ant back if the thing you voted on the application is successful and it gets through to the next round and it goes live on mainnet. After that 2 week period and the voting, those next ones go through, and then they have a much longer, you'll see on the website, a much long development timeline. It's still short, but it's longer. Ahead of that development starting to happen, as an Ant holder, you're able to back a project. And if you back a project, you lock your Ant for 12 months against that project. But by doing that, you're able to share in a USDC rewards pool as well as an ANT rewards pool. The US dollar rewards pool is $100,000. That's, somebody asked earlier, that's already factored. We're not going to be liquidating or converting or doing anything with ANT to get those funds. That's already put to one side. So the prize pool is $100,000. It roughly separates 50% of that goes to builder rewards and 50% of that goes to backer rewards for those that lock up token against the most successful builders. It's probably quite a lot for me to really grapple with, which is why I've sent you the link. It should explain it at a super high level. There will be some big gaps there still because we're building this out as we go. So things like being really specific on build criteria, judging criteria. So in order to win those big awards, there is still a community vote, round two, another community vote where you can pay Ant to pledge your support and give your vote to the most promising applications. But there's also a judges waiting. And the judges, one of which is obviously Autonomi's founder, they have a weighting of 50%. So, there is an element again of qualitative, non digital input just to make sure we're safe and we're doing the right things and we really understand qualitatively what's going on, so that it's much harder to be gamed because you've got some humans in the way that are actually looking at this stuff and tracking and understanding. The idea of this program as well, so not just to support builders and to put some US dollars into their wallets. The reason we're using US dollars as well as Ant is because otherwise we're just creating ourselves a liquidity, like more pressure on liquidity of the token, right? Because if you give developers just Ant and they actually need to pay for developers or people or their bills, they're going to liquidate Ant. If you give them USDC, they've got a stable coin. So that's why we've got the prizes where they are. You hopefully, encourage people to hold on to their Ant, to look after that, because now they're starting to see that there's applications being built on this network. So we can start to show rather than tell. It also means for the folks that are already building in the forum.
Hey, I think we lost you, Bucks. Hello? Hey, Bucks. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
Oh, that's good. What have you been working on today?
Ah, everything you name it. I was looking at the impossible futures thing for one. Kademlia. the kind of inner workings at an engineering level for Cademlia. And then later on this afternoon, I was looking at a mechanism for nodes to accept HTTP requests to help with the proxy stuff. So yeah, a bit of everything.
Well, that's lovely. So,
Yeah,
tell us your feedback about the Builders program.
I think it's brilliant. I think if you take the builders program and the backers, so that people who are really motivated and want to help out, and they think I'm not a coder, but I can certainly want to back these things. Then you've got node runners happening, and hopefully now we get the data upload happening as well. To me, everything's coming into line, and I think it's been quite fascinating to watch. I think the team have done brilliant here under massive pressure from the community to shut things down and kill folk and all the rest of it. And I think the team have done brilliant to stick to the vision, stick to the let it be fair, make sure the network's always fair, reward everybody that we can, let people put money in and let other people be rewarded with some of that money so that we can grow the whole community, which will grow the network and get that ball rolling and get the flywheel moving. And that's been really good because I felt pressure from the community pressure, and it's like it, it's brilliant that the team have been really strong here and really stuck to the vision and as Buck says, keep away from the stick. And to run on a USB disk with no space.
TED Talk. Oh, good. Well, Raz can hear me and 27 Poke can hear me, so that's fine. I'll keep going. I'm conscious we're sort of 5 minutes away from the hour, but just for those of you who are kind of you've dived onto the super early version of the website, which the guys have seen probably for the first time as well now, to just play back if you're not at your computer or you're not able to look at the link. The Impossible Futures pool for the inaugural Series 1, we are planning on running this more than once, is $100,000. That's USDC plus 1.5 million ANT. It's going to start running. We're going to start recruiting from now, but really next week, once we've got some feedback from the community and some initial reactions and some flags as to the problems or flags that they want to just let us know about. It will kick off on April 22nd. That gives time for things like the Python API to be all wrapped up and beautiful, and the TypeScript one as well, so that all of the tools are there. The guys are already excited and talking about refinements and things because now it's real. It's people that not just are building and have been building on the network and testing the network and trying with the network for years, but people that would have never experienced it before and will have zero patience or understanding of how it works and what to do. So we need to really, it's a good litmus test for us as well. There'll be a 2-week alpha, which is where you create your proof of concept. Those that get through that will go up for voting by the community. That'll be on an independent website, as you've seen, which is impossiblefutures.com. It will go up there, and then you can use Ant to then vote for those proof of concepts. The top 12 will go through to the next round. When you spend your AN on those proof of concepts, that goes into the foundation pool, which at some point is recycled in things like we're doing now, right? Network support stuff. So that's how the foundation pool is spent. After you get through that first round, the 12 that get through are then open for backers. So you can come and you can lock Ant against those, the most promising applications. You lock Ant for 12 months. The Ant you lock comes back to you in 12 months. It's not at risk. It doesn't diminish. It's just there locked. But by locking Ant, it gives you access to circa 50% of the USDC prize pool, which is $50,000, and the entirety, you have access to the entirety of the 1.5 million ANT pool. And the website breaks down how that's attributed. But essentially, if you've locked your token up against an application that wins first, second, or third prize, you and everybody else that backed that application received 20% of the 50% of the rewards pool. So the 50% that goes to the backers, you share in 20% of that if you're 1, 2, or third place. And every other application that still goes live onto the Autonomi network and you have backed it, you share with everybody else that's backed those applications the remaining 40% of that backers allocation. The amount you receive is directly correlated to the amount of token that you've locked up. The same is true for the AMP pool, although the AMP pool is not affected weighting-wise by whether an application finished in the winners 3 or whether it just went live. That's equal. Any application that's verified live on the Autonomi network, all of those people that back those applications receive an allocation of ANT based on how much they've got locked up. So you can see it's a really, hopefully, positive thing to do. It will bring attention to the network. It means that we've got, from a Yeah, we're going to need a big graphic. I think I was like starting to sketch out pie charts, and at that point, you've lost the audience, right? But what's really exciting about this, and where Jill and Jim got pretty buoyant about it, is it gives us a really clear content strategy as well. And I know that sounds a little bit buzzy, but if you think about it, we've got these three themes on the website that your app can essentially fall into. So we've got entertainment, which is like desirable experiences. So it could be music, it could be social media, art, film, gaming, some sort of hobbyist thing, culture, whatever. And then you've got knowledge as the next theme, which is anything to do with insights that allow people to be like empowered. So data analysts, analytics, tracking, training, education, LLMs, all of that kind of stuff. And then we've got infrastructure as a theme. And I really care about food and farming, particularly in the UK now, because farmers are just getting like absolutely the raw end of the stick on every possible issue they could. But finance, logistics, building smart cities, transport, food, all of those kind of things. And I think what's really exciting about this is that we can break out, not that we're in the Web3 bubble, because that's something that you guys taught me a bit of tough love when I first joined, that this isn't a crypto project at all. Yes, it happens to have a cryptocurrency as its payment method because it's decentralized, and the powers with the users and the value of the network is in that coin, that token. But in actual fact, you can build anything how you like on Autonomy in just the same way as like an AWS, but with all of the goodness of it being, private, autonomous, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the best way for developers to understand that is to see other developers embracing that and building stuff. And so that's what I'm really excited about. And it gives the guys an opportunity to jump into all of these different spaces and different podcasts and different talks, rather than talking about autonomy at a theoretical, ideological level, which is lovely. But with the greatest respect, there's YouTube videos going back now 8 years about that stuff. And I think everybody nods and agrees. But the next question is how and so what? And so now, rather than doing that, we've got something very specific that it's like, if you're a builder, come and build something. If you get to a proof of concept and it's verified, again, a bit of a human element in there to keep us safe, you get $250. Even if it doesn't get through, you get $250 because it's worth it for the network just to demonstrate that these things are possible. That's better than spending on Twitter ads or Google or anything else. $250 for a proof of concept that can work on Autonomy. Great. If it gets in the top 12, you get $500 and 1,000 Ant before you even go into the next round. So as a developer, you're already winning for 2 weeks worth of hustle, discovering a new community, discovering other developers, discovering like-minded people. And I think Happy Being put something in Discord earlier on when he was talking to Ridden backwards and forwards of like, the more the merrier. And I think that's exactly the right sentiment. It's like, come, build, create, and share the value in many different ways. And so at that point, though, if you're not a builder with some of these things, you think, well, that's great, but beyond having a nice application that I can enjoy, or running a node that doesn't earn me any Ant, how am I meant to interact with this? And it's like, well, actually, if you go and buy some Ant, you can vote, and by voting, if you find the right applications and they get through, you can benefit from that. And if you lock token against those applications, you can benefit from that too. So you're actually part of the network, even though you're not a builder. And for somebody like me, who's not a builder, I'm still able to add a limited amount of value to the network in my way. And I think what's interesting is I love the idea that the more exchanges we list on, we can open that up and more people can discover Ant and do something functional with it. And that is not another crypto project. That is the future of the internet. And that is genuinely exciting because now you're not backing a company. You're not just backing a David Irvin, although he's a very compelling person to back. And I'm sure when we've got all of our ducks in a row, there'll be applications that the team would like to do, but they've got too much bloody work to do right now. But you're actually just backing the entire premise of a different type of internet and all of those developers and all of those people that are coming to build. And I think that's a really exciting place to be. And that hopefully will be reflected in the health of our token, the size of our network, the variety of our applications, et cetera, et cetera. And at that point, everybody is in a much better space. And I think we needed to get to this stage where we've got a network that's on its, like, it stood up. It's a little bit wobbly in the sense of we've got some problems with uploads. But by the time we get to the AlphaNet, which is still its own net, still not on mainnet, right? But by then we'll have the API stuff sorted, and it buys the guys enough time to get everything ready for when the folks move into their 8-week development timeline to then, these prizes are serious, the money's quite big. And I think the trajectory will be really exciting. And I'm hoping if all goes to plan and we're really happy with this, we can start another one later this year. And what's nice about that is that it will keep the momentum, it'll keep the applications flowing and the communications going, and hopefully it'll just mushroom cloud from here. And if all of that was me talking to myself because my mic has dropped, I might just sob a little.
No, we heard you.
Yay! I'm going to stop monologuing at you all now. David, have you got anything to add or anything that you would like to talk about?
Not really. Just a
It's like that. No, no.
just a couple of points. I think the program is a brilliant program. I'm super happy to see developers, and I know that Rusty there will be good and sort folk out and be communicating to them. And I seen Chris'll. Chris was here. I think he might be gone now. But just a big shout out to him. He is the most dedicated guy you could have in a team. And I don't know if many folk know, but Chris, we had a big redundancy, a big seriously hard time in the company a few years ago. And he was out, and then we needed someone like him a couple of years later, and he was delighted to come back. And I was absolutely humbled to have him back with his level of dedication and skill. So massive shout out to him. And I see Chi sneaking away there in the corner, and he's been here for, God, it must be 10 years or something, working away at the innards and debugging. He is like the debug king. He's the guy that will find all your faults and look through all your log files and whatnot. So yeah, that's all. Just a bit of a shout out to a couple of the guys there who are pretty exceptional members of the team.
They are exceptional, and yeah, it's you say about it's very humbling, and it is. I think it is a small but perfectly formed team, and it does feel like a team. It's really nice, and I'm looking for, and I love the enthusiasm that Chi and Chris and Nick and Anselm and all of them had for the program, because they're fundamentally builders. They want to change the world. They want to change the internet, and finally, after all of the hustle that you guys have all put in and support for each other and for David all these years, and obviously David, all the stuff that you went through last year, that could have been an exit stage left, and it wasn't. You came back and you fought and you did the David Irvin thing, and here you are. So, like, I think at some point you just got to follow the signals and keep going, because there's something in here that's truly different. De Grizzly asked a really good question, actually, which is, can we suggest apps without programming? Now, when we were originally looking at this, I think that there's, generally speaking, more than you often need more than a developer to make something successful, right? You tend to need like the strategy, the salesperson, the front of house person, if you like, to be able to wrap something together. Now, sometimes you get an individual that can be all of those things by themselves, which is amazing if you can find them. But say, for example, you're a farmer, obsessed with farmers right now, but you're a farmer, you've got a crop, you've got a network, you've got all the things you need, but you've got no idea how to build an application. So you're a subject matter expert, you might know a developer, but what the hell do you build? So you need someone with an idea. So I think there is a really lovely chance here for people to come and, peer to peer join up, create teams, and do something and put it forward together. And that's what I'd really love this Discord to turn into. It's people finding finding the missing gaps that they've got, almost like, I found David or David found me, and like I just happened to fit a specific space and time that was needed to be filled. And so I think that that's something that's really nice. How that's going to play forward, I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest, at this point. And I guess we keep talking and refining the program. The easiest call to action right now is, if you're a builder, there's $100,000 prize pool. There's a, that you can win. You get $250 for submitting a proof of concept, 500 if you go through. It's quite an easy thing to get your head around. I think what's exciting about that is, if you want to build something, and I know quite a few capable developers, if we can get them tagged and brought into Discord, and you've got an idea and you can find a developer and you agree to partner together and submit something together, that's even better. That's amazing. So we just need to figure that out, and we can use the tags in Discord. You'll notice on the application, we've not asked for stuff like emails and all that crap. You don't need to disclose everything. If everything's on chain, if everything's smart contracted, if everything is community voted, and for now we've got some qualitative like safety catches in there as well. The website is still, it's going to, like the autonomy.com site, it will keep building out, it'll keep changing every week. We've got, you noticed in the autonomy video, some of you, that it looked like it was something that carried on. You're damn right it carries on. There's another amazing scene that relates to this. So there's lots of different elements that will start coming online, and even things like the voting. There was a big back and forth about that and how we prevent that from being, manipulated or gamified or whatever. So that's why at the minute it's a bit high level, but all of the terms and conditions, all of the criteria, that will all appear and be up there, as we start then encouraging people to sign up from next week. We'll start on Monday, and appearing in all the different stages and stuff. And it should be on autonomy, and we will get there. But I think what we need to do is prove that people want autonomy and all of the elements of autonomy. And then, as we're looking, and Chi and the guys are already, the conversation around native token is ongoing all the time in the channels anyway. But it's not just about whether the network can do it, which it will be able to do it. It's about the outside world supporting that, to ensure that helps the scale and we don't end up building inadvertently a wall around the network rather than bridges all around it. And so that's where, all things can be true in these stories. Yes, we need a native token, but having an EVM token, being on exchanges, having people who have confidence in what they're seeing on chain and understanding how that works, and having Web3 wallets and having smart contracts and the standards for that and the verification and et cetera, that helps us right now. So I don't think we need to turn our backs on that. But yes, as demand increases, the use case and the reason for having the native token will continue to increase. And once we become a big enough force, people will want us to be integrated and they will want bridges with us, and it's going to be much easier. But we have to earn the right to get there and to have those conversations and to have folks be willing enough to be able to integrate and work with us on that type of stuff. Yeah, no, Southside, it's the team are the same team, right? And the dream is I'm hoping more of a strategy these days, and so a lot of these things are considered. And what's interesting is going through this EVM process, and even the emissions, and the random sampling, and then the payments and how we're batching them and all that kind of stuff. All of that, because it's real and it's live and it's happening on a significant size of network, informs the native token conversations as well, because we're seeing a comparison in real time. And we're also seeing all of the use cases. So even dropping NFTs and being able to do unlocks and all that kind of stuff, that would have added a whole other element of complexity, which isn't actually connected directly to the network. So it's quite good to kind of get that stuff out the way as well while we can. So yeah, loads going on. I know we've gone over time, but I just feel like I haven't got to speak to you guys for ages. So yeah, apologies for being a stranger. You're not going to get much more strange than me, in fairness. Maybe David, because he's pumped full of some weird toxins, and I'm hoping he's going to learn to fly. But how's that going, David? Your training?
I keep staring at my sheet, but they've never stopped reading yet. Can't do it.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just when you say that, I just think of Matilda. That's what I think. Trying to move a pencil. But there we go. Yeah. Good. I think we got through all the questions. I don't want to keep people longer by rattling on because you do know I love to talk. Rusty, is there anything you want to finish off with or tie off with, as you're the host with the most?
Yeah, thank you for your time. I know this has been awaited by many people in the community for a while, so thank you for doing this for us and answering our questions. And David, thank you for hopping up on the stage. I know people really appreciate hearing from you as well. And then also, thanks to all the devs who are in the chat and all the work you guys do.
Yeah, and I just can't wait to get the backer program up and really get things rolling because I love the fact that one of the conversations, and I just want to end with this, I think. I care about so many people in the Web3 community. I've been in it for a long time and I've made some horrific bets and I've made some good friends and we've launched some cool tech in various places as well. But one thing I would say is that in the one thing those communities have got in common is there's people in there that can do a better job than the people that are extracting value and sitting in the middle of it. And I never understood that. I was like, what are we doing? This is meant to be community. It's meant to be power to the people. It's meant to be disrupting. And even in, the broader crypto ecosystem where it's like the government's now getting involved and you've got big ambassadors representing coins and all of this kind of stuff, and we're obsessing about ETFs, and you're like, hang on, where did we lose the thread here that we can do this for ourselves because we've got all of these tools and we can rely on and work with each other and make value, for one another and for ourselves in doing that and have the freedom associated with that. And I really think as we were sort of piecing together impossible futures and you look at the builders and the backers, and because there is no central entity, there is no weird undertone in any of this. It's a genuine come and build something. If people love it, it will get voted. If it goes live, people that backed it will do very well and share in a USDC rewards pool and share in the AMP pool, because ultimately that's going to benefit the network. And if we could get to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 applications within 12 months, people cannot ignore you at that point. People will come and start building, and hopefully the process will get better and more seamless, and the users will come to those applications. And then we're worrying less about node owners that are running small home nodes, and we're much more, we're enjoying the fact that we've got people using applications and they're getting all the goodness that was intended for local, with all the brilliance of what connectivity brings you. And I think that feels like a really lovely start to chapter 2 of autonomy, from my perspective. And David, you and the community and the team, like, I'm a complete newbie here, but that's something I can sign up to and run after with all of you. So super exciting. Anyway, I'm going to get off my little soapbox now, but basically the headline is you're all awesome, and this is going to be fun. The next 12 months is going to be fun. And so, yeah, if you know people and they want to build something, get them registered. If people want to make some money and want to back something that's worth backing, show them the website and see what they think about buying and backing the projects that look exciting, because everybody wins as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, everybody.
Adios, y'all. Have a good night.
You too, Rusty.